Okay, hi everyone. I'm doing this for the fourth time, so I hope this time it will work. Each time I went to check out things on my website and on several sources online, the video did have been cut, so I'm very sorry about that. So I'm gonna be obliged to shorten the whole amount of things I have to say about YOICHI and NIKKA, but basically, so you have before me the YOICHI distillery by in winter and by snow, with snow. But yeah, we're gonna speak about this today in three different declinations, if I may say. The previous one, which is discontinued, 50 cl one and 43% instead of 45%, and we're going to speak also about a sample provided of the current one by Jim from Whiskey Novice, which by the way, I have his coin today, but I also have the brand new whiskey shared coin to top my Japanese whiskey. And I like this one, which is his monthly minis. Thanks a lot, Toby. So yeah, so I have to quicken. I'm sorry, but you have a lot of details on my website because I'm afraid I'm going to be cut again if I go back to all the sources online. It's the way I work. It's non-edited, so it has drawbacks. So basically, Masataka Taketsuru, who lived from 1894 to 1979 and worked in sake industry before his family works since 1733 in sake, producing sake. Masataka Taketsuru went to Scotland to study whiskey. Because he worked for another company before being on his own. He visited, so he went to the University of Glasgow to learn about whiskey, and from there moved to several parts of Scotland, including Campbelltown, so Speyside, Campbelltown basically, and he went to 3 Scottish distilleries: Longmorn, where in 1918, where he learned about coal firing, distilling, but the coal firing, which he took to do his own. YOICHI is one of the very rare now in the late, in the 21st century, in contemporary days, let's say, to work with coal fire, to fire his stills. They also use peat, but they fire the still with coal, which is super rare. The distilleries from Scotland were using coal or peat prior to gas or other way of steam to heat their stills, but they did abandon that a while ago, 100 years ago, something like that, because they struggle to control the temperature doing this with this material. But so he learned about that. He also learned about not only pot still distilling, where is it, but also coffee still, n.a.s coffee, not coffee. So continuous pattern still, if you prefer, like this, while the other has a boil and it's different shape. I'm sorry, I don't have enough big picture of the stills. I don't think you're gonna see any there, no. But yeah, so he went to 3 distilleries. The third one is Hazelburn, which you guys know with Springbank and the triple distilled variant, but this was also like Longrow, a name of an old lost distillery now. So went to those 3 to learn the craft, and then he picked the northern and cold location of YOICHI town and Hokkaido Island to work his first single malt. Later on, he founded Miyagi-Kyo in 1969, and Miyagi-Kyo, we're gonna do also a special episode or two with what I have in my collection. Did I say that I had Nishinomiya? Yes, I think. And so, yeah, Dai Nippon Kaju in 1934 became in 1952 NIKKA. So you know about that. What else you need to know? Production wise, it's around 1.5 million of liters of alcohol per year. What I learned, did I say they produce before the stills were ready they came only in 1936. First whiskey, NIKKA Whisky, they produced was 1940, and before they were selling apple juice, and as they have a license for distilling whiskey and brandy, they did after that some brandy, and in 2014, when I went for Whiskey Life Paris for the 17th anniversary, 17th? I hope I'm not mistaken on that, anniversary of the NIKKA company, they did release a tribute to Rita, the wife, Jessie Roberta Cohen, nickname was Rita, aka the Muse, so his wife. They released a 30 years old apple brandy bottle, and in the 1960, 61, I don't remember, way before that, Taketsuru, in 62, it's written on the label, my god. The rare old Super NIKKA was born to celebrate Rita. So yeah, YOICHI, while I'm at it, enters in the composition of many whiskies of the company, NIKKA, obviously, on its purest form, because there are no other whiskies and no Scottish whiskies they own in there. It enters in, this is the old label, but the pure malt, which means in Japan blended malt, and also before, let's say, the 2000 and so, also in Scotland, it meant blended malt, but in the early days, bear in mind, I will say before the 1990s maybe, it meant in Scotland as well single malt. So this pure malt term is a bit tricky. And in France, you can still find distilleries in 2022 that call their single malt, they call it pure malt, which is outrageous for me. So you can find also YOICHI and Miyagi-Kyo in there, but in there you can also find the distillery from Scotland they own, n.a.s, but it's still a great whiskey. You can find it in this all malt whiskey produced in a patent still, but this I'm afraid is discontinued. You can find it, this is also discontinued, one of the best blended whiskey NIKKA put off in 10 years ago, 2013 maybe, or a bit before that, one of the best they did, alas discontinued. And also, of course, in the pure malt, black and red, not in the white, I think, not sure, or very little. This was great, by the way, the pure malt red and the black. And of course in the NIKKA from the barrel, that you know, but you can also find some, I think, or you could, some n.a.s in there. But what else about YOICHI? When I spoke to the master blender, I mean the one, because there's also Shigeo Sateo, which probably, I'm not sure about that 100%, probably is more devoted to the blends and the grains references of NIKKA, while Tadashi Sakuma, which I met in Paris in Whiskey Live, is more or was more in the production and selection of cask to create the expressions from YOICHI and Miyagi-kyo. Yeah, what I learned that's not on my books, nowhere. I asked him which was the oldest cask, and this, bear in mind, dates from 2014. So put with a pinch of salt the old little cask in their warehouses, and he told me it was a cask from 1945. And some of those old casks of the 40s or 50s have been I'm not sure. I cannot say about the 1945, but some of the older cask, age of 50 years old, were incorporated in a very special release in 2019, which was a limited edition for the 15th anniversary of the distillery. So they put off a YOICHI limited edition with 5 decades casks in there, and also a Miyagi-kyo. Prior to that, they did a special bourbon finish YOICHI, no age statement again, and a sherry finish as well, and probably the equivalent for Miyagi-kyo, I'm not sure. Last year they brought a YOICHI non-pitted and a Miyagi-kyo pitted, but what is tricky is that I think both are pitted, but at Miyagi-kyo at very low level, and YOICHI, my guess, because I couldn't get the correct information, sorry about that, is that it's probably a bit under 30 ppm, 20 to 30, something like that, except when they do heavily pitted expressions, which I have one, the 25 years old, where they increase the pit to probably 40 to 50. But I don't have the correct information yet. I will update it somewhere if I can find it. Anyway, under the YOICHI name, it's only in 1984 that the first single malt was out. This, not exactly the same bottle, of course, but the 12 years old. 12 years old. What else can I say? First, yeah, they do vettings. Of course, they do vettings. What do they say? Yeah, they do a yearly special limited edition. Yeah, they did some with cask from 1984 to 1990. This is related to, this is an article of Whiskey Magazine France, by the way. This is related to the special releases, so I might mistake if I see that. First single cask from YOICHI was released in 1998, but they will do this less often except for store picks. Scotch Malt Whisky Society, I have one. We will maybe speak about this, we'll see, because it's quite rare. They did manage between 2002 and 2015 to get 20 casks of YOICHI, some of them being crazy good. Shouldn't say that because flippers are maybe there. Yeah, because of the earthquakes issues they have in Japan, the distillery, the YOICHI distillery, does have on his 28 warehouses, somewhere in between this, they have dunnage warehouses, and the casks are only on 2 ranks and not 3 high. 2 ranks high only. Like we won't be able to see it maybe like this. Yeah, the visitor center, that's a problem with the shortage. They had for years 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years old, often in 50, only in 50 cl bottles, single casks that were selling in the 2000s era, but they had to withdraw them in 2014 because flippers were coming there to buy everything, unfortunately. So yeah, they dropped the age statement in summer 2015 because, unfortunately, like Suntory with his Hakushu and Yamazaki, I don't know what happened there. We know I did a special episode about Japan. I will put a link about it where I explain a bit more about the shortage and everything, so I won't go back to this, but they didn't really anticipate the demand that was getting very high with the crossing, to put a long story short, of flippers on one side, the TV show Masan that explained the romantic life of for during a year or something like that. Every day or every week there was episodes about this romantic story of the Japanese with the Scottish and married and blah blah blah. So they did increase the interest of the local people for not only drinking Japanese whiskies as a mizowari with a lot of water and soda, but by themselves, neat, or just a little water. So more demand on local. Also the success, international success. It's a single cask version and not, as I hear sometimes, the regular 45% ABV version. It's a single cask bottle that something like 59 ABV. I don't have the info here now, but I had it somewhere. I had a picture even of someone who went there. So it's a very high ABV, 10 years old, that won international competition in 2001, and that raised a lot of interest into Japanese whiskey and focus the attention there. Also at that time, La Maison du Whisky did start to import a lot of Japanese whiskies, and it's in 2004, the second Whiskey Live in Paris, which I discovered myself and a lot of French people, Japanese whiskies, and we got instantly caught by the high quality of their product. Yeah, this is not very interesting, but 201644 is the name of the first YOICHI single cask ever released in June 16 of 1988, bottled in December 1998. Okay, yeah, code for SMWS YOICHI is 116, by the way. Yeah, crazy thing, super crazy thing. In order to keep the temperature constant in the still room, the stills, to hit the stills, the employees, the stillmen, have to be super qualified, and you have to place under the still every 7 or 8 minute pieces of coal. Every 7 or 8 minutes. So this is not a super green friendly distillery, but I don't care because it's crazy good. Okay, enough of all this. I hope I've covered part of main thing I wanted to say about the distillery. The stills, yes. Yeah, I think I said almost everything, and now it's time to have some drink because after 3 releases I'm getting thirsty. What is this? Oh, and you have a map here as well. This is the first, and this is a French import for La Maison du Whisky. This is the first ever no age statement whiskey we managed to get out, or I managed to get my hands on back in. Did I have the date? And then I don't have the date, but I know it's before, way before, more than 10 years ago. 2005, yeah. So this one is a no age statement, but it is quite different. It's 50 cl, 43% instead of 70 cl, 45% ABV. Both are most probably under 9 years old. But I know by tasting this one, this is my 3rd or 4th bottle, and my last. This I know this is quite young. This is younger, I think way younger than the current NAS, which I suspect is minimum 5-6 years, and probably some of the content are older than 8 or 10, but I cannot guarantee it. When I speak about shortage, I forgot to mention, and a very old cask, I forgot to mention that some of the oldest casks were kept for the older Taketsuru expressions. In 2013, if I'm not mistaken, NIKKA came with at Whiskey Life Paris, for instance, but they came with a 25 years old Taketsuru, which everything was this time silk screen on the bottle, so no label, and it was absolutely gorgeous expression. Probably the best blended malt, but the best blended NIKKA I ever tried. They also did a 35 years old, in which they're over 40 years old content, YOICHI Miyagikyo in there. 35 years old back probably 10 years ago. But alas, couldn't taste it, and it was getting very expensive in the rare bars that had it in Paris. Okay, so we're gonna try this one, and we're gonna compare it to the YOICHI Statement 2017 bottle I have, and the probably 2021, I couldn't find a precise date, that Jim has. So basically we're gonna compare 3 different YOICHI statement, but bearing in mind that only the last 2 are available. Excuse me. I really hope I'm gonna keep up this under the 50 minutes, but I'm not sure. So I didn't have. Oh, can use this. Here's the color of this one. Forgot to mention that they YOICHI uses mainly, not only, but mainly for its core range, New Oak and sherry casks. They don't use Mizunara wood, contrarily to Suntory. Maybe someday, or maybe for super limited editions, but they don't use it on a regular basis. They use also bourbon casks, but more rarely as well. You can find some very, I won't be long on that, but some very special limited edition when they did the NIKKA Taketsuru Pure Malt 21 years old for their 17th or 18th anniversary. Well, I didn't check that, 17th I think. In 2014 at La Maison de Whiskey, Whiskey Life Paris, they did put no less than 4 or 5. So there's the regular core range 21 years old Taketsuru Pure Malt. There's a non-chill filtered one, 21, and there's a 21 Madeira wood finish, which was my favorite of all. There were the port finish. That makes 4, and I think it's all. So crazy amount of different whiskies there, and also single cask, also coffee still and coffee malt, single cask and cask strength, which were insanely good most often. But this, yeah, if you wonder, I'm gonna tell you, this is only thing you would complain maybe. All the YOICHIs, except for some limited edition, are chill filtered and colored, but it doesn't come across super aggressive in that way, so we won't speak too much about that. Legs, they don't stay long, they stick a bit. The tears are quite, I'm not sure you're gonna see them, quite thick and wide. Now on the nose. So this is the more, sometimes in some single cask or some limited edition, combined limited editions, I mean small batches, You can find a note that can put you off, which is a bit farmy, not manure, but a bit farmy, even more extreme sometimes in your YOICHIs, and here's the more raw side of it. But most of the time it's super, and it can come close to Brora or Balichin. But most of the time I tried 23, I think, expressions so far of YOICHI, and only 2 or 3 were of that style, and all the others were minimum excellent to exceptional. So that's why I'm very fond of this distillery, and the consistency as well. And in 2014 I awarded them Distillery of the Decade, no less than that, for 2004 to 2014, because I've been tasting their product for more than a decade now. 2 decades, let's say, almost 2 decades. So yeah, so if this is a fresh one, so this doesn't have much time to oxygenate, but I tried it several times. I had several bottles, so when it got more oxygen, it can come across a bit less pleasant. But this is fully concentrated, neck pour, okay. There is some youth, but there is already the trademark house style, very classy, very complex of YOICHI, which is this super complex combination. Yeah, I would say right away Highland Park, it's maybe the closest to core range Highland Park 18 or the old 12. When I mean old, I mean before 2007. Style of this classy, covering almost all the spectrum. I mean floral, fruity, a bit herbal, a bit spicy, a bit woody, a bit smoky, peated, a bit earthy, super complex. What else can I say? So I have honey there. I won't watch my notes because I'm really afraid now I'm gonna be cut again. So I will rely on my memory. But I will take this later on. It's for 2017. I will first nose the first 3 and then go into the tasting. So I get the typical mix of super green elements, so the tea. Excuse me a second. I'm even not afraid to pause. Not super professional, Greg. Okay, this way you can recalibrate. Yeah, so for me there's kind of downtuned, I don't know if it's correct, Earl Grey with less bergamot than often. I don't really see, I see black tea, I don't really see green tea. Not so much menthol either in this one. Sometimes in the old expressions you also have eucalyptus and cedar, but not often. Of course, honey. Honey is one of the other trademark. Heather honey also. That's why I talked about Highland Park. I have some dried fruits, some on the green side, forest moss, mushrooms, some raisins. Then you have underlying vanilla and apricot and some citrus fruit maybe, and some leather, which is also a trademark from YOICHI. Okay, let's go to now the nose of this one. On my bottle from 2017 and then on Jim's one. So this is cleaner, this is more classy because I think also this is older. I don't think there's 5 years old stuff in there. Well, I think there's probably 3, 4, 5. It's probably goes from 3, I would say more 5, but let's say 5 to 6, 7, not more. But majority is probably around 5 years old. Where here I feel majority is probably about 7, 8, maybe. So the same palate, but way more civilized, more complex, more melted as well. Let's see what I wrote, if I see some other things. Yeah, candied fruit, some noble wood. Yeah, I have a call, but I will have to try it later on. I'm sorry. Apologies for that. I had to do the video several times, so I won't take calls or things like that, for your respect. Yeah, something slightly yeasty, but it's more coming across in this one. But the smoke is very elegant. It's not really ashy. It's a bit earthy, but less than in the age statement expressions. I have less heather honey, but I have a lot of different herbs and flowers, but I cannot really describe anyone precisely. I have mixed flowers honey, some of it being heather honey. I have a slight hint of orange, orange more than apricot, peach I'm not sure. I have sultanas, raisin, dried raisin from Smyrna or Corinth. There's some elements I haven't caught before, which is some botanicals, but hard to pin out which ones. I got one of trademark of 12 years old or more. YOICHIs are prune. I get some prunes in there, plumps if you prefer, but it's not very precise. Let's get now to the Jim's current one. Ooh. This one is a bit more farmy, and it seems the peat is higher. Very interesting. There's a higher rate of peat in that one. It's probably a more recent batch than the one I have. Oh, I forgot to mention some hard caramel. Yeah, the peat here is getting ashy and earthy, and even a bit cow stable, a bit manure. Amazing. There's some nice, not grapefruit, but citrus, almost quince, or rather, oh man, I forgot the name in English, cedra, which I cannot check out now because I'm afraid it cuts. Oh, very interesting. So yeah, the batches are different. I'm gonna cover them to go to the tasting of this. So kampai, as they say, it's the Slangeva of Japan. Okay, let's go for the palate. Oh my god. I'm even discovering other notes than before. That's a sign of that your whiskies has something special. All right. Licorice, figs. coffee. Coffee with some demerara sugar in it. And the honey, you're in the forest. After the rain and everything is not as much as some hack shoes, but and there's some old moss, old mushrooms, and old trees. There's something quite tertiary, quite vegetal. I mean green. Now the almost had a honey towards what was I just forgot. A hint of prune. Ah, this is so complex, so interesting. I'm gonna have to pour a bit more of this. But what I'm doing, I'm crazy. Apologies. I'm in this. But you see, this is very interesting because this bottle doesn't have the same taste, maybe because it's fresh open, than the previous one. But I noticed some batch variations. What's the code in there? The code is 08B20A. See? But yeah, it's way more interesting than the previous batch. So now I'm starting to wonder if my statements were right. This is a more recent one, if I may say. We're still around before 2010, I think. If I can see, but I'm really afraid it will cut again the video, so I cannot double check. You will have the references of the bottles I'm trying there in the description, so don't worry. It's really amazing. It's not super long. It's super complex, super melted. I'm gonna try to open up with a few drops of water. So you see, if you were drinking this on Mizuwari, so with a lot of water and ice, for me it would be, you can do it, but it would be a pity. And I will say the same for the whole range. And same for Miyagi-Kyo. Yeah, so more fruity than you can think. The peat is in the background. I would say a bit like Highland Park. Not really as Bowmore, because Bowmore has more heady flowers than YOICHI, where the flowers are on the second or third ground, but super subtle, and there's a lot of honey in there, but there's way less in I'm on the second one. What I'm doing there? Yeah, I should. I'm sorry. I'm getting okay. So I have the correct glassware now. There you have it again, Masakata Taketsuro. So yeah, in this one, very subtle. We can see it's a bit more aged than the other one, but it's still in the same league, which surprises me a bit, because the previous bottles I have from the 50cl version were a bit more harsh, but still beautiful. This is super subtle. There's some licorice. The coffee note is less important than the other one, but there's something like warm. I didn't speak yet about spices. I will say some 5 berries and Sichuan pepper, 5 berries, pepper, 5 bay, poivre 5 bay in French. So I can translate to 5 berries. So it means there's some acidulous one, there's some more dark one, some black pepper, some different berries, pepper and white and gray maybe pepper, so quite a complex pepper, but also quite a Chinese style Sichuan pepper. This is super complex. Licorice, leather, heather honey a bit, some green elements again, forest, moss, etc. Some citrus fruit, but it's not prominent for me as some would maybe tell. And some beautiful premises of what the 12 years old used to be for me. So very interesting. Okay, I hope I didn't mistake. I'm gonna move again, but on the palette with the Jim's sample. Again, more pear in there. I forgot to mention pear, some ripe pear. There were just a hint of it in the other ones, but in this one there's more pear coming on. Oh my God. There's more pear on the palette too. It's amazing. You know what that reminds me of? You will be surprised. Some of the best batches of the old Glenfiddich 12. Not the current one that's quite aggressive and too simplistic, but some of the best early 2000s. And it's amazing. So this one is less complex, I would say a bit less complex than mine, but it has other notes that are interesting. They're coming in. Yeah, it's a bit earthy, a bit green, herbal. It's funny how the pear come across this one and not mine. So it's always interesting to compare batches. Both are beautiful. Okay. Very nice, beautiful. There's some, I would say 2.5 out of 5 on both versions, maybe a bit more in this one. There's some warming spices that makes the whiskey last for a long time. But now I'm gonna compare it. So beautiful whiskeys all the way. Really warmly recommended, but a bit pricey for now. 75. Not this. Okay. This is from in France, and as I can see elsewhere, from 75 to 85 euros, which is a bit high. Bearing in mind that these were sold a decade ago around 69 euros, 65, 69 euros already, while the 12 years old were sold around 98 euros in France, and the 1550, something like that. You have to multiply by 2 or 3 now for those age statements. Another information I can give you, it's not an information per se, but it's the provision of NIKKA Group public statement, and also they told that to me in the show. The master blender and the representative, the head representative, they told me we will see these age statement come back most probably in 2030 or 2031 or 32. That's what I say. To reconstitute the stock of the 10 years old and hopefully the 12 and more. I hope the single cask will come back at that time. Now, I'm not reviewing this now because it will be too long, but I'm comparing it to my 2017 NAS. NAS on the palate, clean, super complex, super refined. It's not a rough whiskey. This is something very elegant. And now I will compare it with the old 10 years old, sorry, which is on the nose, more tertiary, more smoky, and more earthy than smoky, and more ripe fruit coming on the nose, on the palate. Ooh, well, there's not much left, but I did put the gas off, but the air off. Wow. This is old style YOICHI. This is older. There might be probably older than 10 years old content in there as well, so that's make it even more difficult. Super classy tea-ish notes, black tea, maybe Earl Grey, maybe green. There's some Demerara sugar combined with some end of coffee, like you have some time for those who put sugar in their coffee like me. I know it's a shame. Or tea. There's something of that, what's last in the end when you have almost finished and there's a bit left and the sugar is melting more with the coffee that slightly gets colder, and some Demerara sugar definitely with some licorice and leather and also this slight heather honey, and the spices are not too high, but they were a bit more at the beginning. Let's put some water in there. This is a very nice flight. I enjoy it a lot. This is for me one of the, if you don't put that as your second favorite distillery, I think if your experience is in whiskey, you have to put that in your top 20, let's say, mandatorily. This is so elegant, so classy. Now I have a bit menthol coming in, so some mint and green tea indeed. It's so classy. It reminds me sometimes of some old Strotilers from Speyside, but when I say old, 25 to 40. So you see, for the 10 years old, okay, very expensive, to be as good as an old Speyside and bring something more like Highland Park in their good days, this impresses me very much. Finish is endless and super subtle, and this is wonderful. Okay, so I think I can wrap it up with conclusion will be, despite this no age statement, the review was mainly about this. Despite this no age statement, I highly recommend this as one of the best whiskies around. I don't care if there's no age statement. I know it's expensive. I care about pricing. But this will be replaced for sure, of course, while the others can't. Even if I have a backup for some of the bottles there. And really, if you haven't come across this, okay, it's expensive, but try it in a bar or swap some samples with someone, and I think you might be surprised. Rating for this for now is 90 out of 100. Forgot to give a rating to the other ones. Probably a bit less for the 88, maybe for the 50cl no age statement. For the ones for Jim, I will say almost the same, 89 or 90. I prefer this one, so maybe 89. But honestly, that's high rates. And yeah, thanks to Jim. Go check out Whiskey Novice. I think he's gonna put off a review of this as well. I've seen a message about it. I was preparing this, so I say I will watch it. And yeah, pay attention to true Japanese whiskey, please. Thanks. See you soon, and for next part, very soon.